I, Dr. Javed Saban, would like to extend my warm welcome towards all the participants in today's webinar. Also, on behalf of Radiant Pharmaceutical, I sincerely thank you for your precious time for this scientific session. And today, our topic is empagliflozin and cardiovascular outcome in type 2 diabetes mellitus, facts and future. If we see for the last few years, the target of diabetes care not only limited to endocrine gut, but also shifting to other organ as well. And heart is regarded as most important target, not limiting to macrovascular, but also microvascular damage in diabetes. And moreover, the recent guidelines has strongly recommended innovative drug empagliflozin due to its beneficial effects, cardiorenal protection, and so many promising results in different aspects of management of cardiovascular outcome as well as in diabetes management. So it is indeed highly needed to focus on our scientific interaction on the appropriate therapeutic strategies and initiate evidence-based therapy for cardio protection and to reduce the severe mortality in the patient with diabetes. And so without further delay, I would request our today's moderator, Dr. Monarul Islam, Associate Professor of NSBD, to conduct the session. Dr. Monarul Islam, please.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. Welcome you all to today's scientific webinar on empagliflozin and cardiovascular outcomes in type 2 diabetes mellitus, facts and future. We all know that cardiovascular disease, diabetes mellitus, both are very important comorbidities, and also one increases the impact of others on the overall morbidity and mortality. So there is an untiring effort on the part of the scientists and the healthcare workers to do something and to find out some innovative molecules to reduce the impact and the link between the cardiovascular disease, especially in diabetic patients, to reduce morbidity and mortality. In this continuum, today we are going to discuss a very innovative discussion on a new molecule, empagliflozin, and cardiovascular outcomes in the context of type 2 diabetes mellitus. We have in our midst a great academician of the country, Professor Abdul Wadud Choudhury. He is the Professor and Head of the Department of Cardiology of Dhaka Medical College, and he will be delivering the keynote speech today on the topic already I have mentioned. And besides this, we have a very efficient panel of experts, in which the countrywide best and most efficient persons are involved. I like to introduce at first them with you. The panel of experts include Professor Mir Jamaluddin. He is the Director and Professor of National Institute of Cardiovascular Disease, the premier cardiovascular institute in government sector of the country. We have also with us Professor Muhammad Shahabuddin. He is the Professor and Head of the Department of Cardiology of Sylhet M.A.G. Osmani Medical College, Sylhet. Professor Moinuddin Ahmed. He is the Professor and Head Department of Cardiology, Enam Medical College, Savar, Dhaka. We also have the renowned interventional cardiologist, Dr. Kaisar Nasrullah Khan. He is the Senior Consultant, Department of Cardiology, United Hospital, Dhaka. We have Dr. Mahbubur Rahman. He is the Senior Consultant, Department of Cardiology, Labate Cardiac Hospital. And also Dr. Muhammad Khaled Mohsin will be with us. He is the Associate Professor, Department of Cardiology, National Heart Foundation and Research Institute. Dr. Mohsin Ahmed, Associate Professor, Department of Cardiology, National Institute of Cardiovascular Diseases, Dhaka, will also be with us throughout the program. So without any further delay, we like to invite Professor Abdul Wadud Choudhury to deliver his keynote speech. I think the audience will enjoy the session most. Let us hear what Professor Abdul Wadud Choudhury has in his bag for us. Professor Abdul Wadud Choudhury.
Assalamu alaikum. and good afternoon everybody. Today we are going to talk about empagliflozin, which come into being as an anti-diabetic, and now with the cardiologist has claimed that it is a cardiac drug and we need it. Is included in our armamentarium, and why that is so. Today I'll be talking about that. And my module will include today's talk, the burden of cardiovascular disease risk in type 2 diabetes, the need for sodium glucose co-transporter 2 inhibitor in type 2 diabetes, the role of empagliflozin, its particular role in metabolic and cardiorenal aspect, and beyond diabetes, the new role of EMPA. Now, what about the burden of cardiovascular disease? Look at this. In Bangladesh, incidence of diabetes is increasing. Now, this 9% 2006-10 reference, 9% included only diabetic, not the IGT population. That population also have higher risk of cardiovascular disease, and it's going to increase. The curve is going up. But what happened with diabetes? The onset of macrovascular complication occur early in metabolic dysregulation. Look at this. If I have the genetics, my family has history of diabetes, I'm going likely to develop type 2 diabetes. If I gain the weight, there will be insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia. That will lead to dyslipidemia, the metabolic syndrome, the hypertension. Later on, manifested as IGT or diabetic. And thereafter, the frank diabetic will ensue. The macrovascular complication starts early, and when the frank diabetes starts, the microvascular complication starts. We, the cardiologists, are concerned mainly with the macrovascular complication, heart attack, heart failure. What about the microvascular complication? That's also important because that affects the kidney, that affects the endothelial dysfunction happen with this uncontrolled diabetes that lead to diabetic cardiomyopathy. And with the hyperglycemia persistent, the complication rate gradually increases with age. This diagram shows hyperglycemia, insulin resistance, and hyperinsulinemia. All these are part of metabolic syndrome. They lead to insulin resistance, and that lead to problem in different forms. Energy utilization imbalance due to mitochondrial dysfunction that lead to activated renin-angiotensin and aldosterone system. There is impairment of mitochondrial calcium handling, both energy utilization and energy to mechanics transfer. The coupling, the energy utilization and the mitochondrial contraction, the coupling is hampered. There is also inflammation, endothelial dysfunction, oxidative stress led to that. There is microvascular dysfunction. There is also neuropathy. And all this lead to cardiac stiffness, hypertrophy and fibrosis. That's the first stage of diabetic cardiomyopathy. And gradually, that leads to heart failure. If you have diabetes, your stroke chance is 1.5 times increased. Your MI chance is almost twice the normal level who doesn't have diabetes. Cardiovascular death as a whole, 1.7 times more. All-cause mortality is also more with diabetes. How much? Let's consider a group of patients at the age of 60 years. Let's follow them up. One group has diabetes, one doesn't. We'll find out if the patient has diabetes compared to the non-diabetic, his lifespan is 6 years reduced. And if he has established cardiovascular disease, the lifespan reduction is more than a decade, 12 years. So it's very imperative we pay more attention to diabetes, its control, its prevention, and utilization of all the armamentarium that is present to prevent this premature death. We have to remember that before the outer figuration of the clinical cardiovascular disease, there is subclinical cardiovascular disease. The Framingham Offspring study that showed patients with diabetes, 70.4% have subclinical cardiovascular disease, 2/3 of the patient. And as a whole, the risk of cardiovascular event increased twice, twofold. If you have a diabetes and had an MI or stroke, you are an increased risk of death. On the right side, you have getting all those factors, stroke and MI, diabetes and stroke, that shows that your risks are much more increased. If you have none, if you consider that as one, that's almost much higher the hazard ratio. What about heart failure? If you have diabetic and atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, if you consider the heart failure, 50% of the heart failure patient had diabetes. And in heart failure, if the patient have diabetes, it is associated with 28% increase in risk of all-cause death, 34% increase in risk of cardiovascular death, and 35% increase in risk of hospitalization for heart failure. That means not only mortality is increased, morbidity is increased, expenses are increased. And it increases the chance of heart failure, risk of heart failure across all age groups. Consider this diagram. The yellow one graph is diabetic, the bluish one non-diabetic. You will find out, let's consider at our age, 45 to 65 at this age group. If you are non-diabetic, your chances are much low. If you are diabetic, it's much increased. And with advancing age, the risk of heart failure is aggravating very rapidly if you are diabetic. And what about us, the Asian population, particularly in the subcontinent, which is called the capital of diabetes? The Asian patients have high cardiovascular death rates in type 2 diabetes. That's 10-year evidence for cures. Look at this one. Overall death, 7.7 death per 1,000 patient years. If you do not have diabetes, whereas it is 26.5 with diabetes. Ischemic heart related death, 2.2 versus 9.1. Cerebral vascular death, 0.7 to 2.7. Everywhere you have the macrovascular causes, and as a whole overall death rate much higher in diabetic population. And how do we manage that? We have to have multifactorial management. We have to control the glucose. We target the HbA1c less than 7%. We can use all the drugs, metformin, SGLT2 inhibitor, GLP-1, RA inhibitor, DPP-4, sulfonylurea, thiazolidinediones, insulin, everything. We can lower the BP, preferably with RAS blocker, CC calcium channel blocker, and thiazide-like diuretics, and preferentially combination therapy. We have to lower the LDL cholesterol, preferentially less than 70 or more than 50% if at high risk, and less than 100 milligram per DL or more than 50% at moderate risk. With what? With statin, with ezetimibe, or in resistant cases, the new kid in the block, PCSK9 inhibitor. And of course, the weight loss and smoking cessation and exercise, individual diet and lifestyle modification is the cornerstone on which all treatment stands. Why do we need the sodium glucose cotransporter inhibitor? Let's consider that. In diabetes, there are an octet of ominous factors. There is decreased insulin secretion, decrease in incretin effect, increased lipolysis, increased glucose reabsorption from the kidney, decreased glucose uptake by the muscles. There is also neurotransmitter dysfunction, increased hepatic glucose production, and increased glucagon secretion. All these lead to hyperglycemia and all the consequent problems. Now, the sodium glucose cotransporter 2 is a channel that transmit glucose absorb the glucose from the lumen inside the cell along with sodium. Now, when we are in case of diabetes, this SGLT2 number is much more increased. Look at the first figure. There is fourfold increase in SGLT2 receptors. Overall glucose transporter reabsorption is much more increased, and we have to react against that. By inhibiting the SGLT2, these drugs remove the excess glucose in urine. Thereby, they lower the HbA1c. They act also on the natriuretic mechanism, and thereby they are associated with a decrease in intercellular sodium concentration. 4 SGLT2 inhibitors are approved by the US FDA. The first one was canagliflozin in 2013. Then came empagliflozin, then dapagliflozin, and last ertugliflozin in 2017. Now, SGLT2 inhibitors have been shown as a class to reduce the risk of cardiovascular event. EMPA-REG outcome that showed by empagliflozin, the heart failure hospitalization was reduced by 35%. Cardiovascular death by a magnificent 38%. 3-point MACE that include non-fatal MI, non-fatal stroke, and cardiovascular death, as well 14% decrease. Canagliflozin also do that the heart failure hospitalization is reduced, 3-point MACE is reduced, but cardiovascular death effect was non-significant. Dapagliflozin, the declared TIMI-50 trial shows heart failure hospitalization is significantly reduced, but it failed to show any effect on cardiovascular death and 3-point MACE. But recent studies have shown that dapagliflozin is achieving that goal as well. In 2018, the SEC expert consensus decision pathway, they show if a patient has diabetes and a clinically apparent atherosclerotic vascular disease, we have to use guideline-directed medical therapy, including lifestyle change, antiplatelet, blood pressure lowering agent, antilipids, and of course glucose-lowering therapy that must include metformin. But we have to consider addition of a SGLT2 inhibitor or GLP-1 inhibitor. Why? Agonist. Glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist. Because these two drugs demonstrated cardiovascular outcome benefit. And we can decide whether we should stick with metformin and lifestyle change plus minus insulin, or we can add this drug depending on the patient's discussion, his financial status, comorbidities, etc. Based on the risk-benefit profile, they recommended empagliflozin in 2018 is the preferred SGLT2 inhibitor of choice when treating patients with type 2 diabetes and manifested atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. In 2019, the ESC guideline, in collaboration with European Association for Study of Diabetes, EASD, they say cardiovascular risk categories. How do we categorize the patient in diabetes? If the patient has diabetes and established CVD, very high risk. Target organ damage, very high risk. 3 or more major risk factor, very high risk. Or a very long duration of type 1 diabetes, very high risk. If the patient do not belong on those groups, but diabetic duration more than 10 years without any target organ damage or additional risk factor, still high risk because of the long duration. The patient is not yet duration is not yet 10 years, doesn't have any other risk factor, still then it's moderate risk. That means if you have diabetes, from cardiovascular point of view, you are always from moderate to very high risk group, not in mild risk group. What about empagliflozin? What is specialty? What is metabolic and cardinal aspect? Let's consider this. This is a study, UKPTS, that considers intensive control of blood sugar. There's a study that looked at from 1977 to 97. In 99, they reported. And the baseline HbA1c, they go 1 to less than 7% versus around 8%. Standard care or intensive care. They found microvascular complications are reduced, but the initial study showed, 10-year study, the cardiovascular event rate was similar, but the long-term study, 20-year study showed that's also reduced. Mortality, 10-year study doesn't show any benefit. Long-term study, yes, with intensive control, you do have mortality benefit. Accord study, that's an interesting study. USA and Canada, around 10,000 patients are to be affected. They wait for very rapid control of blood sugar. Intensive control, 7.5% versus 6.4%. Microvascular disease control, cardiovascular disease was neutral, mortality was increased. That's surprising. Why? But they found out, actually they tried to lower the sugar level, HbA1c, within 4 months. Average decrease was from 8.4% to around 6.5% within 4 months. That rapid decrease in blood glucose may be the problem. Why we are saying that? In the advanced study, there's more than 10,000 population in Australia. They go for gradual reduction in the HbA1c, and they found microvascular complication reduced. The others are neutral. PADT, Veterans Affairs Diabetic Study trial. They also go for 9.4% initial baseline HbA1c. The target one was less than 7%, another was around 8.4%, quite higher. They also show microvascular component complication rate is decreased, but cardiovascular component slightly reduced in the long term, not much. The mortality benefit is not there. But all this shows, even if you control the blood sugar intensively, you cannot reduce the macrovascular complication, particularly the cardiovascular death or complication, that much. There has to be something else. Not only glucose control is there, it's sufficient. Therein comes the empagliflozin. The EMPA-REG outcome study, that's in 2015. 2014 it is first FDA approved. 2015 EMPA-REG outcome study was there. And it showed cardiovascular death, as I have already mentioned, 38% reduction, all-cause mortality, 32% reduction, 3-point MACE, 14% reduction. And it shows empagliflozin is doing a tremendous job of reducing the mortality and cardiovascular, macrovascular complication in adults with type 2 diabetes and established cardiovascular disease. The dose was 10 to 25 milligram as needed for the patient in top of usual therapy. All the patients who are getting RAS blocker, that's ACE inhibitor or ARB or ARNI, they are getting MRA, they are getting beta blocker, they are getting metformin, they are getting also other anti-diabetic agent as needed. On top of that, empagliflozin was added. And the outcome is this. How the proposed mechanism, very simple and very deceptive. Diuresis, glucose excretion, natriuresis. That's the effect SGLT2 inhibition leads to. And what does that translate into? On the cardiac function, it reduces the preload, of course. It reduces the afterload. Blood pressure is reduced. It increases the cardiometabolic efficiency by improving the glucose utilization. It reduces the blood pressure, reduces weight, reduces the left ventricular mass, and very surprisingly and important, it improves the kidney function. What about glycemic control? It's effective. On top of the usual drugs, if addition of that, look at this. Empagliflozin 25 milligram combination in comparison with sitagliptin, DPP-4 inhibitor, a proven drug, is effective, more effective than sitagliptin. What about weight reduction? Empagliflozin versus glimepiride as add-on to metformin. The patients are getting metformin plus either glimepiride or empagliflozin. the weight loss is significant in empagliflozin group, and that's maintained over 4 years. Very surprising. Only addition of metformin reduces the weight up to 5 kg, but after 6 months to 1 year, there is weight gain. If you use insulin, the average chance that your weight can be increased up to 5 kg. In ACCORD study, in the very obese group, it has been found the rapid reduction of HbA1c by increasing use of insulin led to up to 11 kg weight gain. This very high weight gain. 30% obese patient has that weight gain by using insulin. But empagliflozin is reducing the weight. The glimepiride and other medicine, they do not have any effect on weight. And thiazolidines may increase weight. What about the nocturnal hypertension? That's Japanese data. So, EMPA is reducing the mortality, the morbidity in heart failure patients, in cardiovascular patients. Maybe that's related to well control of nocturnal hypertension. Yes, that's true. Look at this one. Compared with placebo, the nighttime blood pressure minus 6.3 millimeter of mercury, compared to placebo is minus 2.5. Daytime BP around 12 millimeter mercury reduction. 24-hour BP around 10 millimeter reduction. Quite significant. That's on top of the usual standard of care antihypertensive therapy and others. EMPRISE study that compared with DPP-4 inhibitors. Around 25% of the patients in both groups, DPP-4 inhibitor and empagliflozin, they have history of cardiovascular disease. That may be old MI or history of stroke or a ischemic heart disease. They had a coronary artery procedure. Stenting or something, or they have peripheral artery disease or heart failure. Now look at this. They have monthly gaining over 24 months. The graph is the size change is established. There is 44% relative risk reduction for heart failure hospitalization in EMPRISE study. And what about the treatment and the safety? The EMPRISE long-term effect. This 39,000 matched pairs. Look at the right-handed vertical line. The bullets in each case favors empagliflozin. All-cause mortality, heart failure, hospitalization specific, heart failure hospitalization plus other recurrent hospitalization, all these are in favor of empagliflozin. MI or stroke, borderline benefit. Hemorrhagic stroke, a little bit more benefit. But heart failure and all-cause mortality, definite benefit. And it has been shown that it's effective in reducing cardiovascular death in various types of cardiovascular disease. Be that single vessel disease or multi-vessel disease or patient with prior COPD or prior MI or prior stroke, peripheral artery disease, prior heart failure. Everywhere compared to placebo, empagliflozin is effective. And it's effective from the very quickly. The significant cardiovascular death reduction was observed within 2 months. Significant heart failure hospitalization was observed, reduction in heart failure hospitalization by only 2 to 3 weeks. Very effective, very quick action. What about the insulin requirement? There is 60% relative risk reduction of insulin initiation. A patient group who is diabetic but haven't yet taken insulin, if you start them on empagliflozin along with other drugs, you will find out that 60% less relative risk reduction. They will be needing insulin. there is 58% insulin dose reduction, up to 20% dose reduction. So that also leads to less insulin doses. We can go, instead of 3 times insulin doses, go to basal insulin along with empagliflozin, and we can reduce the cost to some extent as well. What about EMPA-HART? This looks at the mechanistic effect of empagliflozin. We know that left ventricular mass index, that means left ventricular mass index to body surface area, that may indicate myocardial hypertrophy and remodeling changes. And it's a strong and independent predictor of cardiovascular and all-cause mortality, coronary event, or coronary procedure, or heart failure. And it has been shown with therapy, regression of left ventricular mass index leads to found in cardiovascular patient. What about that? In the valiant post-MI patient with heart failure, they have shown every 10 gram increase, risk of cardiovascular event increased by 22%, cardiovascular death 20%. Death or heart failure. If you have hypertrophy, you are having more problem. Look at this one. The pink one on the graph represent concentric hypertrophy. That means cardiovascular death with concentric hypertrophy is more, reinfarction more, heart failure is much more. And that heart failure with concentric hypertrophy included the diastolic heart failure group mostly. As a whole, cardiovascular composite, if we record as a whole, cardiovascular death, infarction, stroke, sudden cardiac death, etc. Cardiovascular concentric hypertrophy patients have very high risk considering the normal geometry population. Now, in EMPA-HART study, they used only 10 milligram empagliflozin, and that showed there is minus 2.6. That's the reduction we have found. Versus placebo, there is reversal of cardiac LV remodeling in type 2 diabetes with coronary artery disease following only 6 months of empagliflozin therapy. There is a study going on which will be looking at the long-term effect of empagliflozin on the mechanics of heart, and that will be available. The study will be available in 2022. What about kidney? New onset or worsening of nephropathy. There is 39% related to this reduction that starts very quickly, within a few months. How? Because empagliflozin reduces interglomerular pressure by about 6 to 8 millimeter of mercury. And EMPA-REG has shown, look at the vertical line, favors placebo and favors empagliflozin on the left side. All the factors, new onset macroalbuminuria, new onset or worsening nephropathy, doubling of serum creatinine, initiation of dialysis, everything, if you start empagliflozin only 10 milligram, it favors the patient. There is improvement of the renal function or maintenance of the renal function. And look at this one. They have 10 milligram versus 25 milligram. eGFR was preserved. Both 10 milligram and 25 milligram have similar effect. That means on kidney, the effect is not necessarily that much of dose dependent. Only 10 milligram empagliflozin can do a little bit of wonder. So, very recent 2020 expert consensus decision pathway on novel therapies for cardiovascular risk reduction. Novel therapies. What are they suggesting? They are suggesting if the patient is 18 years old with type 2 diabetes and one or more of the following, an established atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, or an episode of heart failure, or diabetic kidney disease, or they have multiple risk factors, so they are at high risk for atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, we can think about SGLT2 inhibitor. But we have to consider whether the patient is pregnant or breastfeeding. If it is so, we shouldn't start it because we do not still yet have any safety data. And we have to look at the eGFR as well. If it is less than 30 ml, we better not start SGLT2 inhibitor. In some studies, up to 20 ml eGFR, they have given AMPA with good effect, but we have to wait for larger studies, more long-term effect, then we can recommend that. But obviously, up to 30 ml eGFR, we can use the empagliflozin. So, the opportunities, when to start? At the very beginning, if the patient has atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, or they have multiple risk factors, or at the discharge after admission for an atherosclerotic disease, or in a patient with diabetic kidney disease if the GFR permits, or patient have a high risk cardiovascular disease. We can start either glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist, that means liraglutide, which is an injectable one, and or the oral drugs, the SGLT2 inhibitors, which includes the empagliflozin, the dapagliflozin, and perhaps not yet that much proven canagliflozin. So, ADA, American Diabetic Association, European Association for Study of Diabetes, all they recommend the choice of second-line therapy. The first-line therapy is, of course, complex and metformin. And then, as an add-on, you have to consider the SGLT2 inhibitors. Or, if the kidney doesn't permit, you can use a GLP-1 receptor agonist. That's all about diabetic patient. But nowadays, we have to consider beyond diabetic, this group of patients have some studies and some results. What is that? DAPA-HF trial reported in recently, early this year, and they have shown that dapagliflozin 10 mg once daily along with the standard of care compared to the placebo is good for the heart. DAPA-HF include patient more than 18 years, ejection fraction 40% or less. Their mean ejection fraction was 30 to 31%. NOH class 2 to 4, actually class 2 and 3, because 4 has less than 1% patient was in class 4. Anti-proBNP was slightly raised. Exclusion, where if the eGFR was less than 30, recently worsening heart failure, unstable patient, they have restarted it. They started in stable patient. What's the outcome? Look at the graph. They all favors dapagliflozin. On the context of primary composite outcome, which is worsening heart failure or cardiovascular death, both, or hospitalization rate, or hospitalization for heart failure rate, urgent hospital heart failure visit in the outdoor, or cardiovascular death. 10 mg dapagliflozin. 5th May 2020, FDA approved the SGLT2 inhibitor dapagliflozin for the treatment of adults with NIH class 2 to 4 heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. Recently, the AMPA reduced that has been presented in the recent ESC. It's a phase 3 randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial with patients with ejection fraction less than 30% actually. Population were both type 2 and non-type 2 diabetic, chronic heart failure patients. Both diabetic and non-diabetic patients, if they have heart failure, they are included here, along with the standard of care. That's the both DAPA and this one almost similar, but here the eGFR target was up to 20 ml, they have included. Less than 20, they have excluded. In DAPA it was 30, here it is less than 20. Now look at this. The body mass index, placebo, EMPA, both are quite obese patient, in average body mass index, quite overweight patient. The LVEF, here mean was 27.7. In DAPA HFR study, it was around 31%. The heart failure, both ischemic and non-ischemic, 52.8% were ischemic and 47% were non-ischemic. In DAPA study, it was around 55 and 56% ischemic, and the rest were non-ischemic. And diabetic, around 50% were diabetic, 50% were non-diabetic. Here, hypertension, 72% were hypertensive in both groups, placebo versus the EMPA group. The drugs they are getting, almost all the patients were getting a RAS blocker, either with neprilysin inhibitor or without neprilysin inhibitor. MRA was present in 70% patient, beta blocker in around 95% patient. 31% patient had ICD, around 12% patient were on CRT. That means very sick patient group, and the number was EMPA group was 1863, placebo group similar. Now look at this one. What's the primary endpoint? First, adjudicated cardiovascular death or hospitalization for heart failure. From the very beginning, the graph were diverging, favoring empagliflozin. Relative risk reduction, 25% reduction. Absolute reduction, risk reduction, 5%, 2%. And number needed to treat, only 19. What about total hospitalization, first and recurrent hospitalization? 30% reduction in hospitalization for heart failure. What about kidney function? The purple line is the EMPA line, and it's showing that the decline in eGFR is very slow if you add empagliflozin. The other line, the black one, shows with placebo, with standard of care, all the good drugs are given, but there is decline in eGFR very gradually and very steeply if you do not add empagliflozin. What about the adverse event? We are giving it in non-diabetic patient. Are there any risk of hypoglycemia? Now look at this graph. As a whole, 1.4% have hypoglycemic event, severe hypoglycemic event. Placebo 1.5. That means same, both placebo and with drug. That means there's related to other factor, not due to this drug. In case of diabetic patient with EMPA, the rate is 2.2, with placebo 2.4. In non-diabetic patient in whom we are concerned, we are adding a anti-diabetic drug, 0.7% severe hypoglycemic event. Placebo 0.6%, same. Genital tract infection, 1.7 versus 6, slightly increased. Complicated infection, placebo versus EMPA, same, 0.3. Out of 1863 patients, only 6 patients have complicated genital tract infection, only 31 patients have urinary tract infection. And the recommendation is you discontinue the drug for a while, treat the UTI, treat the underlying any other problem, then restart the EMPA. So the 3 endpoints we are looking for, the cardiovascular death or heart failure hospitalization reduction, EMPEROR reduced has shown EMPA is effective, PA is 0.001. Secondary endpoint, first and recurrent heart failure hospitalization, EMPA is effective, it reduces it, PA is 0.001. eGFR slope, secondary endpoint, EMPA is effective, 0.001. All 3 key points it has ticked. So, what consider while we prescribe the empagliflozin, we should not be using it in pregnant and breastfeeding women. We should not be using in acute stressful state and moderate to severe chronic kidney disease, less than 30 ml, though they have included some up to 20 ml, but we should not as yet. What about COVID? We should not be using it because as it leads to natriuresis and reduction in volume, the chances of hemoconcentration may lead to theoretically increased chance of thromboembolic event. That's why in COVID-19 infection, empagliflozin or all SGLT2 inhibitors are should not be used, not yet. We should be cautious in using complicated and recurrent UTIs. We should be cautious about using it in fasting. May have to reduce the dose or may have to use it at a time when the chances of starvation is less. Or if the patient have elevated hematocrit, we should be cautious about using it. Not in totally negative, but we should be cautious. If the patient is volume depleted, they are not taking fluid enough or getting too much loop diuretics, they should not be using AMPA without supervision. The summary: despite the current standard of care for cardiovascular risk factor management, we have shown, many studies have shown, with intensive glucose control, glycemic control is very good. Still then, cardiovascular mortality morbidity remained high. In the management of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease, SGLT2 inhibitor and particularly empagliflozin has been evidenced to address metabolic, cardiorenal, morbidity and mortality on top of standard of care. All the good drugs are given. Even on top of that, if you add this, you are doing some good. In the light of AMPA-REG outcome, there is robust evidence for cardiovascular and renal benefit in patients with type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular, established cardiovascular disease. All the guidelines have recommended this. And now, with the AMPA-REDUCE study, the future lies in the therapy of heart failure for empagliflozin, even in patients who do not have diabetes. Thank you, dear audience. Thank you for your patient hearing.
Thank you, sir, for your brilliant and lucid lecture, as is always expected from you. Dear audience, we have already heard a good presentation from Professor Abdul Wadud Choudhury, today's keynote speaker. This will be followed by question answer session as well as the comments from our panel of experts. At first, I am going into the question answer session. An interesting question has been asked. Can SGLT2 inhibitor replace diuretics used in heart failure? Abdul Wadud Choudhury, sir, please.
In general, it has been shown, even in patients with hypertension, if you add empagliflozin, you have to reduce the diuretic part. Otherwise, the blood pressure is going down too much. In heart failure patient, it has been shown you can reduce the diuretic. Yes, you can do that. And practically, while using this in clinical practice, we are already observing that our patients are needing lesser amount of diuretic.
But may not replace totally.
Can I add here?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Practically, it is told that Professor Choudhury has shown very nicely that it is an add-on therapy on the regular therapy like heart failure, regular heart failure therapy. Yes, according to ESC guidelines, all the drugs, all the devices, everything they are getting. In addition to that, if we give the empagliflozin, then it will reduce cardiovascular mortality and other all benefits. So I think diuretics dose, whether it will be reduced or not, it has been marked, noticed, recorded or not. I want to know from the Professor Abdul Wadud Choudhury.
The studies have shown with addition of AMPA, the volume depletion is not that much.
Yes.
So the need for diuretic reduction is actually depending upon individual patient case. But as a whole, they are not saying that you can reduce dramatically.
Yes.
But individually, as I was saying, we have observed with the improvement of the LV function, of course we need to reduce the diuretic, always. We need to increase the ACE inhibitor or ARNI or ARB or increase the beta blocker much more. The heart failure treatment guidelines suggest you have to reduce the diuretic always when the patient's symptoms improve, and improve all the other drugs as much as the upper limit tolerable dose.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Mohsin Ahmed is with us. He is to leave for unavoidable circumstances. We'd like to hear from you regarding today's presentation and the drugs used.
মহসিন আজকের এটা জলসার আয়োজন করছে না, সেটার জন্য তো ব্যস্ত।
হ্যাঁ,
আমরাও ওয়েট করতেছি।
Dr. Mohsin Ahmed, please.
unmute
Can you
him.
hear me?
না, আমার মনে হয় চলে যেতে হয়েছে। ও আসলে প্রোগ্রাম চলে গেছে।
Okay. Okay. The next question.
Dr. Mohsin Ahmed কিন্তু
consider.
ডক্টর মহসিন আহমেদ কিন্তু অলরেডি মেসেজ আপনারা খেয়াল করে নেন, আমি খেয়াল করেছি মেসেজ দিয়ে গেছে যে লিড হচ্ছে।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, না ঠিক আছে।
যেখানে মির জামাল স্যারের প্রশ্নের একটা জিনিস অ্যাড করি একটু আমি, এখানে এই রিডাকশন অফ ডায়াবেটিক রিকোয়ারমেন্ট বা ডোজ সেটা হয় নাই, এফেক্টিভলি দেখা নাই, কিন্তু ইন্ট্রোডাকশন অফ মানে নিউ ইন্ট্রোডাকশন অফ ডায়াবেটিস ইন পটেনশিয়াল হার্ট ফেলিওর পেশেন্টস অর ইন হার্ট ফেলিওর পেশেন্টস, এইটার ইনসিডেন্সটাকে কমিয়েছে, এটা বলেছে। এমপ্লাগ্লিফোজিন দেওয়ার ফলে হাই রিস্ক মানে এম্পারর যেটা এম্পারর রিডিউসড আর এম্পারর এম্পারেগ আউটকাম স্টাডি যেটা হাই রিস্ক পপুলেশন ছিল, তার মধ্যে প্লেসিবোর সাথে কম্পেয়ার করে দেখা গেছে যে যাদের নতুন করে ডায়াবেটিস লাগছে এই ধরনের পেশেন্টের বার্ডেনটা কমেছে। এটা একটা সিগনিফিকেন্ট টাইম।
মইন ভাই কেটে কেটে আসতেছে। একটা জিনিস কিন্তু খেয়াল করতে হবে, এম্পাগ্লিফোজিন SGLT2 ইনহিবিটর অ্যাজ এ হোল, টাপা এইচএফ এবং যেগুলো স্টাডি আছে সবকটাতে বলছে যখন অ্যাকিউট স্টেট হবে তখন ইউ হ্যাভ টু বি কশাস অ্যাবাউট দিস ড্রাগস. You have to pay attention to the loop diets in others, and when you are using those, you have to reduce the dose or maybe temporarily discontinue the drug, then restart again.
Yes, actually the purpose of the two drugs are separate. The next question, sir, considering the outcome, which one should we use?
Can I add something?
Yes, sir.
The indication of diuretics in heart failure is very much clear and precise. That if there is evidence of volume overload, we will have to use the diuretics, and it will depend upon the dose and on subsequent steps along the clinical status. So you have rightly mentioned that the diuretics and empagliflozin is not the same drugs that acts on the same way. So it should be used on the top of the standard care. I mean, it should like this. They should not replace one another.
এইটার কথা এই পয়েন্টটাই আমি বলছিলাম যে যখন নিড ফর ডায়াবেটিস, ইন্ট্রোডাকশন অফ নিউ ডায়াবেটিস অর স্টার্টিং নিউ ডায়াবেটিস ইজ ইউজড বাই দিস।
আমরা যেন আবার ভুলে না যাই ডায়াবেটিস বাদ দিয়ে যেন এটা না দিয়ে শুরু করি।
এক্স্যাক্টলি
তো অ্যাড অন, এইজন্য তো আমাদের অ্যাড অন।
আজকে মানে অদূত ভাই যে সুন্দর প্রেজেন্টেশন দিয়েছে, আমরা সবকিছু ভুলে যে শুধু এম্পাগ্লিফোজিন দিতে পারি।
আমি কিন্তু বারবার বলছি অন টপ অফ আদার ড্রাগস, সব ড্রাগ দেওয়ার পরে এটা অ্যাড করতে হবে।
দীর্ঘ 45 মিনিট থেকে 50 মিনিট একদম মানে পিন ড্রপ সাইলেন্স হয়ে শুনছে যে খুবই সুন্দর একটা প্রেজেন্টেশন হয়েছে।
An excellent presentation.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, if we consider the outcome, which one is preferable, dapagliflozin or empagliflozin?
অ্যাকচুয়ালি ইয়েতে দেখা গেছে না, আপনার ইয়েতে বলা হয়েছে ওখানে দুটা যদি কম্পেয়ার ডাপা এইচএফ যদি হিসাব করি দেখা যাচ্ছে ওখানে মর্টালিটি রেট কমেছে 18%, এম্পাগ্লিফ্লোজিন 8%। আবার যখন আমরা প্রাইমারি বেসলাইন পয়েন্ট দেখি এম্পাগ্লিফ্লোজিনে মোর সিক পেশেন্ট গেছিল, এবং সেটা যদি অ্যাজ এ হোল ওভারঅল যদি হিসাব করা হয় দুটার মধ্যে তাহলে দেখা যায় এম্পাগ্লিফ্লোজিন 40% রিডাকশন বেশি। কাজেই এটা দুটাই ইফেক্টিভ, দুটাই এই জন্য ডাপার অলরেডি কিন্তু 10 মিলিগ্রাম কিন্তু অ্যাপ্রুভ করে দেওয়া হয়েছে ফর নন ডায়াবেটিক পেশেন্ট ইন হার্ট ফেলিওর।
Thank you, sir.
এম্পারটা কিন্তু FDA দেয় নেই, তারা ডাটা প্রেজেন্ট করেছে, ওটার মধ্যে সামনে অ্যাপ্রুভ করবে, বাট বোথ আর ইফেক্টিভ। বাট track record for EMPA is more robust. EMPA regulation holds cardiovascular mortality, DAPAর কিন্তু mortality rate কমাতে পারেনি ওই স্টাডি, কিন্তু EMPA কমিয়েছিল, and that was a large number of patients were there.
Thank you, sir. We will again try to invite questions from the question box. And now I like to
এখানে
hear from
সৌরভ ভাই একটা কোশ্চেন করছেন, ইন্টারেস্টিং কোশ্চেন করছেন যে উনি ডাপারটিভের জন্য হার্ট ফেলিয়ার দিয়ে উইদাউট ডায়াবেটিসে রেনাল ফাংশন পারমিট করে দেওয়ার কথা, কিন্তু ওনার সিকিডি পেশেন্ট ডিক্লেয়ার করে। এক্স্যাক্টলি এম্পাতে কিন্তু এই ইজিএফআর যেটা ইম্প্রুভমেন্ট যেটা দেখিয়েছে, ডাপারটিভের জন্য সেটা দেখাতে পারেনি। এবং সেক্ষেত্রে সেটা যদি কনসিডার করি, এম্পা ইজ এ লিটল বিট সুপিরিয়র দেন ডাপা।
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Professor Mir Jamaluddin, sir is with us. He's the director and professor of NICVD. We like to hear from him as a expert panelist. Sir, please.
স্যার আমি একটু বলি, স্যার কিন্তু এন্ডোক্রাইনোলজির ডিগ্রি হোল্ডার, শুধু কার্ডিওলজিস্ট না, তোমরা কিন্তু ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ডে অনেক কিছু আছে।
Yes.
Now, thank you, Professor Chaudhary, for your brilliant speech. Practically, we learned diabetes I have learned diabetes during 1989, and I have the degree on endocrinology 89, almost 30 years ago. And after 1991, I have entered into cardiology, and I am running with cardiology as well as diabetes, or mostly 80% of endocrinology is diabetes. So, if a person knows the diabetes, once upon a time it was called that if a person knows syphilis, he will know everything. He knows everything. Then it is told if a person knows diabetes, he knows all specialties, because it affects all the different organs and all the different systems. And here, what we have learned today from the brilliant speech of Professor Chaudhary, that empagliflozin should be written by us in the case where there is atherosclerotic cardiovascular diseases, renal failure, heart failure. In these cases, if the patient is diabetic, we must write down this drug, provided we should see that the patient is not in acute condition. And another thing is EGFR, it should not be less than 30%, or DAPA, it should not be less than 20%. This basic thing, so far I can recognize that this basic thing I have been able to take from his lecture, and this should be helpful in our practice. And thank you, Professor Chaudhary. Thank you for your brilliant speech.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. We have the pioneer interventional cardiologist of the country, Professor Sufia Rahman, with us. Madam, may I ask you for some comments regarding today's presentation and the topic?
Assalamualaikum.
Madam.
Good afternoon. As usual, the presentation was excellent, and as Professor Shahabuddin said, we forgot everything, only remember the EMPA. The way talk was like that. Definitely, it has given us the guideline to do what to do, what not to do. I have one question that in practice, though we are not diabetologists, we do prescribe it. We do prescribe it, and when it came in the market, I was asking them when they marketed it first time. I think Niprojamide they did it, and I was just asking them then, can it be given twice, or it is always once a day? They said no, till we know further, it has to be once a day. Now they have taken out a combination of tablets, that which is a EMPA with metformin, and this can be given twice a day. So if it can be given twice a day, why not only EMPA can be given in twice a day? I mean, just I want to know for practical purpose and for the juniors as well. One hand you are saying not to give it more than one dose, and then in the other hand, you're splitting it and giving it in combination of drugs. Can you enlighten me, Professor Udit Chaudhary, regarding this point?
Assalamualaikum, madam. Thank you for coming with us. The thing is, actually, the idea is total dose, not the splitting of the doses. And when a drug that is effective in a single dose, that's preferable for the patient, for the convenience. But it doesn't matter if you're giving it a divided dose in a single dose. For example, in heart failure, we give many of the drugs in twice daily dose, because that lead to less chance of blood pressure variation, and also the vasodilator effect of certain drugs remain intact throughout the day, both at night and day. That's according to the clinical context. It actually doesn't matter whether you are splitting it or not.
When they
Thank you,
marketed
sir.
it, they definitely
Yeah.
highlighted that it cannot be given,
Because
and now
because
they given.
Madam, that's because regulatory system suggested you have one dose that's regulated, that's given authority sanction, that should be the preferred dose. But we, the physicians, at our own behest, can use the dose as things appropriate for the patient. That's always on our behalf. We can do that.
And one other thing is, 2 to 7, I think 2 to 7% patient can have the UTI. It is said in the brochure. And have you, all of you, those who are listening or those who are in the panel, have you come across this complication or from the patient as or noted it from the question that they are having it?
Madam, I have been using this gliflozins, SGLT2 inhibitors, for a long time, and in many patients. I have found only one or two patients. I have to stop the drug, treat the UTI very adequately, give them long-term prophylactic antibiotic, then restart it with good effect. And then thereafter, they are not having any UTI because their blood sugar is well controlled. But initially, we have to withdraw it, and they are also recommending that. But if anyone have complicated UTI, they should not be starting empagliflozin or dapagliflozin or any other gliflozins without properly treating the underlying cause of infection.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Professor Muhammad Shahabuddin, sir is with us. Sir, can you present some comments?
Yes, yes, well, it was really an excellent presentation, an in-depth presentation regarding the use of empagliflozin in diabetic patients and also in non-diabetic patients. And the effects, there's beneficial effects other than diabetics. It reduces the morbidity and morbidity in the cardiovascular systems. I have been with a long time using the empagliflozin. I am also taking the empagliflozin along with metformin. That's because I am a diabetic patient. So with these drugs, I am feeling much better control with the glucose, and also the other things that I have reduces weight. But regarding the complications, I have not been seen any UTI in my patients. So far, I have treated, but I have not used these empagliflozins in heart failure patients. And in future, I have to use these drugs in heart failure patients, though it has not been approved by US FDA. Dapagliflozin have been used, but I am using the empagliflozin. So this is the class effects. I think both the drugs will be equally effective in reducing the cardiovascular complication morbidity. But there is a basic something difference in between these two drugs. Though still it's a hope that only with the glucose control cannot meet the preventions of cardiovascular complication. So there must be something else in empagliflozin that can reduce the morbidity and readmission to the hospitals. I will again give my special thanks to Sir Abdul Wadud Choudhury for his nice presentation. And it's a brilliant presentation. I think everybody will learn a lot from his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thanks all the president. Thanks
pay
to
attention
madam
to-
for joining with us. And thank you very much.
We can pay attention to another question. Heart failure patients commonly get diuretics. So if we use empagliflozin, can it cause more dehydration?
The dose recommended for heart failure non-diabetic patient, 10 milligram. Very unlikely to produce volume depletion. It was 1.7% in the studies. For 25 milligram, as has been said, it's depending upon the physician and the patient, because diuretic use must be dependent on the level of water logging in the patient case. We are not supposed to use it indiscriminately for indiscriminate time.
Thank you, sir.
That's the point.
Thank you, sir. We are already running short of time. We like to hear from Professor Moinuddin Ahmed. He is at Savar, Medical College. Professor Moinuddin Ahmed, sir, please.
Thank you for inviting me. First I have a question. So I have a question and a very vital question. I know there is not a very lot of answer for that, but still it is important. Dr. Wadud, what do you think is the mechanism underlying the effectiveness of this dapagliflozin and empagliflozin and this SGLT2?
I tried to answer that in the end. We do not actually know because the answer seems too much simple. It produces a little bit of natriuresis, it produces a little bit of volume depletion, and it also excretes the sugar. But how come its effective so important? We still do not know the answer. And so we should not try to pretend that we know the answer. Not yet. Scientists are also trying to find out why this is so much effective.
Thank you, sir. We have got Dr. A.P. Sohrabuzzaman. Sohrabuzzaman, sir, can you have some comments?
স্যার কিন্তু ভিডিও দেখা যাচ্ছিল না স্যার
না উনি
He is the renowned electrophysiologist of the country.
ভিডিও এবং ভয়েস রিএস্টাবলিশ হয়েছে এবং মেসেজ দিয়েছিলেন কিন্তু কথা বলছেন না
Okay.
কায়সার খালিদ ভাই আছেন
Dr. Kaisa Nasrullah Khan, senior consultant from United Hospital, is with us. Kaisar bhai, can you make some comments?
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to all. It is a splendid lecture and very coordinated moderation by both Dr. Wadud bhai and Dr. Manwar. I would just say that I would have thanks Radiant Pharma to bring this drug first in the market on EMPA, and also I would like to take the opportunity to thank them for bringing tenecteplase, Metalase. These two drugs are very innovative drug. I just want to know from Wadud bhai one question, that is, has it got any role in HFpEF, heart failure with preserved EF?
I have shown that LV mass is very important in heart failure composite endpoint of different complications, from sudden death to heart failure hospitalization. To look at that, ongoing study is going. The result will be available in 2022. But EMPA has been shown in EMPA heart study to reduce the LV mass index. So maybe, we do not know the answer yet. After 2022, we will be getting that answer.
EMPA Preserve is going on.
EMPA Preserve is going.
EMPA Preserve is going on. That 2021 এ শেষ হবে এবং 2022 এর ফার্স্ট
রিপোর্ট করবে,
পাবলিশ হবে।
Now I request Dr. Mahbubur Rahman, senior consultant from Labate Cardiac Hospital. Sir, can you make some comments? Dr. Mahbubur Rahman, sir, are you available?
স্যারকে দেখছি না।
Dr. Mohammad Khalid Mohsin, sir.
Thank you, Manwar, and thank you, Wadud, for very nice and elaborate presentation. As Professor Sufia Rahman Madam has said regarding the twice daily use of empagliflozin, I face some negative feedback from the patients because some of them are taking a night dose of a combination therapy with metformin. Actually, we all know the diabetic patients are prone to polyuria and nocturia. And this drug, if it is taken at night, it can, I think, increase the natriuresis and the nocturia can be aggravated. There is more chance of urge incontinence of urine, particularly in female patients. So we should think about prescribing empagliflozin at night. But we have no choice. If we give a fixed dose combination with metformin, we have to give twice daily dose. There is no other option because the 5 milligram dose is not enough and it's not recommended by the guidelines. So this is one point. Another thing, many of us present here, we practice coronary intervention. As what about I would ask Wadud and Kaisar your opinion that we withhold, and Madam is also here, we electively withhold metformin before we do a coronary angiogram and an angioplasty. So as this drug is likely to cause some volume depletion, do we need to withhold with this drug before an elective cardiac procedure? And do we need to rehydrate the patient who are on empagliflozin before an elective cardiac procedure? It has not been addressed in the guidelines, but this question comes to my mind very often. So I would like to have your expert opinion. And in patients with congestive heart failure, if they are on SGLT2 inhibitor, does the fluid requirement need to be very stringent? Because if we withhold the fluids, we give diuretics, we give empagliflozin, all these can lead to volume depletion and increased load on the kidneys of the patient. So I expect opinion from the learned panelist and the speaker regarding these 2-3 aspects. Thank you very much.
Can I say something? The point is, in case of coronary intervention or other intervention, no study actually definitely looked into that. But one thing is that metformin problem lies in somewhere. It affects the nephron. But here, the empagliflozin do not harm the nephron. So there's as yet no contraindication or no cautious caution from the authorities about the continuation of empagliflozin of SGLT2 inhibitor as a whole during coronary procedures. Number 2, again in heart failure, diuretic has to be curtailed according to the volume, not the empagliflozin doses. You are not going to reduce the ARNI doses, ACE inhibitor doses, or beta blocker doses. You reduce the dose of the diuretic. That has to be curtailed because it doesn't have any mortality benefit except symptom relief. Except mineral receptor antagonists, they are not as diuretic effective. They are effective in some other way. They act on the neurohormonal axis. So that role is important. So here again, we have to rethink the doses of diuretic itself, but not the other doses.
And regarding nocturnal dose of empagliflozin,
yeah, that's a problem. But one thing you would be surprised to find out: give them only metformin, they will have the same level of nocturnal problem, because that's related to urinary irritation, dryness of the genitalia, etc. Basically, elderly women. That actually not related to diuresis, because 5 mg empagliflozin or 10 mg empagliflozin doesn't have that much effect on volume depletion or urination. Actually, just have do a small trial. Give some patient only same complaint, only metformin. We'll find out they are still complaining of it.
We hope that there will be further trials to have the correct answer regarding this question. Another question: would you please consider adding empagliflozin for cardiovascular benefits if blood glucose is already controlled in type 2 diabetes patients?
Yes, unequivocally yes. I will tell you something. Insulin, the most important medicine in diabetes, do not have a very neutral in cardiovascular outcome. Metformin, slightly weak, good effect. SGLT2 inhibitors, positive effect. DPP4 inhibitors, neutral. Thiazolidines, negative effect. Gliptins, among them, saxagliptin, negative effect. So, among all these drugs, only the SGLT2 inhibitors have definite significant positive effect. Metformin has some only slight good effect. Even insulin doesn't have any effect on cardiovascular outcome.
Regarding GLP-1 inhibitor agonists?
Only GLP-1 inhibitors, liraglutide. Liraglutide has class 1 evidence of definitely, and particularly if the patient has kidney failure, liraglutide is the drug of choice, not SGLT2 inhibitors. If the EGFR is less than 30 ml. But that's injectable, that's a problem. But it's very good.
Liraglutide is very costly as well, and
very costly.
You cannot use. It is more indicated in obese patients, actually, overweight patients. And
yeah, it's a very good drug, but very costly and intensive.
One practical question has been asked by one audience. It is a recognized complication that with use of empagliflozin, there may be recurrent UTI. How to control UTI in these groups of patients?
Again, I have told you, do the urine culture, find out the organism. If that is there, treat it. If there is recurrence, you have to think there is some underlying condition. From male, it's usually the prostate. You have to use long-term antibiotic for treating the prostate problem because the infection is indwelling. It's a solid organ. No antibiotic penetrates there very well. You have to give treatment for a long time, at least 6 weeks to 8 weeks time. If it is upper level UTI, you have a stone in the pelvis, you are going to have recurrent UTI. You have to treat the underlying cause. If it is in case of female, poor hygiene is a cause, poor control of diabetes is a cause, postmenopausal atrophy is a cause. You have to give hormonal ointment like that to improve the dry vaginal and other problems. Treat the underlying cause. Treat the infection well. Keep prophylactic antibiotic for at least 2 or 3 months. Then restart the therapy. You may be surprised to find that the patient is having no problem. I am telling that from my practical experience.
I add something. It's absolutely
Yes,
right, Professor Udud, what you said. But in European countries, we don't have this fruit in our country, cranberry. Cranberry is a natural source of having not to have the it's very beneficial for the UTI, recurrent UTI. And in the Western countries, they have these regularly those patients rather than, but sometimes the patients are not tolerable to the antibiotic and long-term antibiotic. They prefer in natural way, and that is the cranberry in the form of juice. But in our country, it's not available. But after that, because of the need, the cranberry tablet has come out.
Yeah.
And I was prescribed a lot, and I've seen the benefit that those who are having, as you said, before even you add the UTI repeated if there is there, if you prescribe that and must continue, and that also controls UTI in female and male both very nicely. And you can also, the juniors I'm saying, the seniors, you know it. So since it is the fruit is not available and the juice is not available, then a tablet is available now in the market that can be used for repeated UTI, and it can be given without any side effect for a long time. And if Professor Udud has highlighted it time and again that if there is underlying UTI, you treat that first before you give them. And this is, I think, absolutely right. Azan is already given. Professor Manwar, Professor Udud, Khaled, Moinke, অনেকদিন পরে দেখলাম, all of you, the star of the interventional cardiology in Bangladesh. Thank you very much having me. I want to say goodbye. Thank you again. Hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. It's a bonus to have you with us. Thank you, madam.
It's a pleasure. I feel very good. When I see all of you, I really feel good. But
Thank you, madam. Thank you,
hope
madam.
to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
I think we should have a last question for today. In case of heart failure, EMPA can be used before ARNI or not?
No.
No.
The answer should be ARNI first. Stabilize the patient, add on EMPA.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir Moinuddin Ahmed, sir, can you make some comments?
Thank you. That was quite an elaborate presentation on the empagliflozin and the group of drugs. It was an enlightening one. I want to thank for a very well prepared and rich presentation on the whole aspect of this new kid on the block. You're right, this is another new kid on the block. Now we had a discussion about one just a few days back. This is another new kid on the block, and it is becoming an armament. It's coming into the armament of cardiology, true and well established drug for cardiologists to use. I should say, because it is so much, it's so important in management of secondary prevention of cardiovascular disease all kinds as well as heart failure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This is one of the hot topics in cardiology, and I think there are so many questions with the audience. But due to shortage of time and the time for Maghrib prayer, we are going to shorten our session. Sohrabujjaman sir, are you with us? Probably he is not available. So, with this, I like to conclude the question answer session. At this point, I invite Wadud sir to say something regarding the closing remarks.
I think while making this, preparing for this presentation, it has helped me a lot to understand the goal of treatment in heart failure and also in cardiovascular mortality benefit drugs. I was seeing one study, AMPA regulation outcome. Empagliflozin reduces mortality, relative risk reduction versus placebo was 32%. With eplerenone 15%, with spironolactone 30%, with nebivolol 12%, with metoprolol 34%, with carvedilol 35%, with bisoprolol 34%, with candesartan 10%, with teranorepil 22%, with remipil 27%, with enalapril 16%, with captopril 19%. Only the beta blockers and also the spironolactone and empagliflozin has come nearer together at the top of treatment that actually reduces all-cause death in cardiovascular patient, particularly if they have LV dysfunction.
30s.
If they have LV dysfunction.
In the 30s. Percentage is in the 30s.
So that's the point. We should know, as a whole, we know heart failure patients have very high mortality rate. You should use all the armamentarium, all the missiles that we have to achieve our goal, to improve the quality of life, to reduce hospitalization, to reduce death rate. And to that end, this drug is a helpful one. Thank you everybody for patient hearing. And so thanks also to Incepta. And I'm also thank Dr. Mahbub for helping me.
Thank you, sir. Today's program has been possible with the unrestricted cooperation of Radiant Pharmaceuticals Limited. May I invite Dr. Mohammad Javed Sobhan, Lead Medical Marketing, Radiant Pharmaceuticals Limited, to say a few words before the audience.
Thank you, Dr. Monar Islam, for your wonderful moderation. So we are really proud to witness such a wonderful session, and thanks to all for such lively and interactive session. I would especially thank today's speaker, Professor Abdul Wadud Choudhury sir, for his brilliant, elaborative, and very informative deliberation on the topic, and also for valuable insight to clarify all the queries during the discussion. I would also especially thank to all the respected panelists, Professor Mir Jamaluddin, Professor Subir Rahman, Professor Mohammad Shahabuddin, then Professor Moinuddin Ahmed, Professor Sohrabujjaman, Dr. Kaisan Nasrullah Khan, Dr. Khalid Mohsin, Dr. Mahbub Rahman, and Dr. Mohsin Ahmed for their sharing valuable remarks and expert view, and for interactive presence to make this session really and truly successful. We certainly believe that today's thought-provoking discussion has given us some great insight on how empagliflozin can play a key role in cardiometabolic care in type 2 diabetes patients. And also like to inform, just to update you, that Radiant Pharmaceutical, along with we are manufacturing quality medicine, and also we are being instrumental importing many life-saving medicines from many global pharmaceutical partners. And we have tenecteplase, that is metabolase, and we have novel anticoagulants, dabigatran, that is Pradaxa, and most importantly, we have made available and marketed the original and innovator molecule, research molecule, empagliflozin, that is Jardiance, in Bangladesh, from Boehringer Ingelheim of Germany, to ensure the best possible treatment option. Just to mention that all the conducted study and the publication which has been presented and shown by our respected speaker, that is with the original molecule empagliflozin, that is Jardiance, with Jardiance, and so and no other, there is no other generic empagliflozin have conducted any RCT so far. So all the evidence based that outcome being shown with the original Jardiance. I just like to update and reconfirm you that. So once again, I'd like to thank our today's moderator, especially Dr. Mohammad Monwar Islam, for very nicely conducting the session and for his very nice interaction and to make the program very nice. I'd like to conclude by thanking all of you once again for your valuable time and making it successful. Thank you. Stay well, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz. Thank you all. Hope to be with all in a next session.